starting at the big dog, the top dog of like sexual immorality and things like that can be kind of hard. So start smaller. If you learn how to control your belly, you can learn to control the other parts of your body too. But I'm going to keep on moving. We're going to leave that for another day to discuss that. Hey everybody, it's bindi.joyce.marc and I am back with another video. But before I get started, I would like to feature today's dress of the day. If you have not had a chance to head over to themodestfitting.com, I encourage you to do so and sign up for my notifications so that you can be notified when I drop my first collection of dresses and skirts featuring modesty, femininity, and beauty. But without further ado, let's begin. So the next section of the book called Fascinating Womanhood, written by Helen Andelin, that I'm going to be going over is what she considers key aspects of worthy character in godly wives and mothers. And so I'm going to be going over each character trait by itself. And the first one that we're going to do is self-mastery, as she calls it. In the Bible, we would probably more readily call it self-control, but she's called it self-mastery, and we're going to start reading what she has to say. She opens with a quote. It says, "He who rules within himself and rules his passions, desires, and fears is more than a king," a quote by a man called Milton. You need self-mastery to manage your life successfully, to keep commitments, manage time and money, control thoughts and words, subdue appetites, school feelings, overcome temptations, and reach goals. She hasn't mentioned a single Bible verse in any of those words that I've written, but much of what she's talking about kind of is a really neat and nice summary for what the Bible requires from all of us when we are Christians. But because we're women, I'm going to focus on us as women, what God calls from us as Christian women, wives, and mothers. I like specifically that she took note to mention it involves keeping commitments, managing your time and your money, controlling your thoughts and words. I think that one in particular is one that women tend to struggle with because of the fact that we are more oriented around our emotions, and like the rest of creation, once sin entered in, our emotions too became corrupted, and the expression and the processing of those emotions for women in particular can be corrupted by sin and evil. And it's on us as once we are saved, once we belong to God through the work of Jesus Christ, we are called to live in a way that we have self-control even over our what does she say, our thoughts and our words. The Bible mentions that in the day of judgment that we will be called to give an account for every careless word we have ever spoken. Isn't that kind of astounding? That's kind of mind-boggling. But it's a character trait that's not only necessary for our walk with Jesus Christ, but it is necessary for the way that we live out our lives as married women and as mothers to the children that God has given us. She goes on to say that this self-mastery must also include subduing our appetites. This is one that, again, this is a small one, but it's not really a small one. It's just, she just casually mentions it, but I even remember in my own self where I had to look at even just the way that I thought about eating food. It's crazy when you consider how extensive the effects of sin have reached. Even something as normal and as natural as needing to eat food because that's how our bodies have been designed, even that mechanism has been tainted and corrupted by sin, such that I remember we kind of jokingly talk about it in our culture, being hangry. It's like you're so hungry that you're angry. And I remember my husband would jokingly be like, "Man, you are super hangry." But I had a thought where I was like, you know what? That's actually sin. It's sin for me to be so controlled by my belly, to be so controlled by my appetite that it could lead me or cause me to mistreat my husband or to be sharp-tongued with my children. That's a really pathetic excuse, and it's actually a demonstration of me not having, how did she say, I had not yet subdued my appetite, but was actually being subdued by my appetite. And it became something that was so apparent to me that I included it on my list of prayers that I pray over myself every morning, where I ask God, please help me. I said, Lord, would you be the Lord over my life? and not let me be lorded over by my belly. Let me not let my belly be my God. I want to be controlled by the Holy Spirit. And then from that position, have control over my appetite and not have my appetite controlling me. I actually put that in my list of prayers because while it is a joke to be hangry, it's a sin. It's a corrupted expression of a very right process. We are to experience hunger pangs and let that be a cue like, okay, my body's low on fuel, let me feed myself. But it isn't something that should be corrupted and corroded to the point that it causes sin. That's not correct. Another thing, I'm glad that she put on here subduing appetites, because in the last book review I did, which was the proper care and feedings of husband, I forget the author's name, but she did put a segment in there that when a wife refuses to control her eating and to control her exercise, it has huge ramifications for herself as a woman and how she feels living in that body. But when she's a married woman who has taken on the responsibility, the sexual responsibility of a man, that lack of control over your appetite and maybe a lack of willpower to exercise can have huge implications in the marriage. And so I'm glad that she included that part of self-mastery includes subduing your appetite. The other ones that she mentioned is schooling your feelings. This book was written a while ago. I think it was written in the 1960s, so some of the language that she uses may not readily register, but when she says school feelings, she means to train them, to take control over them, to direct them, as opposed to your feelings controlling you. And so I touched on that a little bit, where even our emotions, we as women are wired to navigate with our emotions, but just like all aspects of life, that process has become a little bit corrupted with sin, so that has to also be brought into subjection of the Word of God. If you're experiencing an emotion or an emotion in such a degree that is causing you to sin, that emotion needs to be brought subject to the Word of God, and it is not to rule and reign in your life. You are to rule and reign over it. And we see us either excel or really kind of suffer that the most in our marriages and in the context of family, and that's where it actually matters the most. So we have to, as women, learn to rule and reign over our emotions as we allow Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit to rule and reign over our lives. We are not to be subdued by our emotions. The last couple things she said is overcome temptations and reach goals. Overcoming temptations, we're going to talk about that later. It's a part of self-mastery, and you can make shipwreck of your life if you don't ever learn how to overcome things that are tempting to you. But anyway, I wanted to go on and continue reading some of the things that she said. The greatest person in history with the most difficult goal first prepared himself by self-mastery. Jesus Christ did not begin his ministry until he went into the wilderness and fasted 40 days and nights. During this time, he overcame the temptations of Satan and thus gained the self-mastery needed for his mission in life. When you determine to improve your life or pursue a worthy goal, opposition appears in the form of self-doubt, discouragement, and the temptation to quit. You need self-mastery to overcome the opposition and move forward toward your goal. Here are the keys to gaining self-mastery, and we're going to go over what she mentioned. But I thought that this was super important. That last paragraph, when you determine to improve your life for a worthy goal, opposition appears from self-doubt, discouragement, temptation to quit. You need self-mastery to overcome these things. That statement is so important because I think it applies to almost any and everything, whether you're a high school graduate who's entering into a rigorous educational program for college, whether you are a woman who is newly married and is trying to tackle kind of this intangible idea of homemaking. That can be like a task that feels daunting. If you're a wife and mother who's navigating seeing to your responsibilities to your husband, seeing to the new responsibilities of your children while still maintaining the home. These can all feel like obstacles that you can't overcome, but you actually can't give in to that. You have to be able to be someone who can overcome self-doubt, overcome discouragement, and resist the temptation to quit. And your success in being able to do all of those things is going to be rooted in how firmly rooted are you in your relationship with Jesus Christ? Like, how often do you commune with the Holy Spirit such that you can navigate these challenges through life from a position of victory as opposed to a place from being defeated? It's interesting to me, like, when we consider women who have accomplished great things in their life and women who have accomplished very little, and I don't necessarily mean in as far as like, oh, the ones who have accolades from the public or those who built a huge business. I mean, even being a successful wife and mother and a household manager, that is a huge accomplishment. People who have done that oftentimes are remembered throughout the lineages of their families of leaving rich legacies that long when they are dead and gone, people are still talking about mother so-and-so, grandma so-and-so, auntie so-and-so. Like, you can leave life-impacting legacies when you are successful within the realms of your home. And conversely, there are women who accomplish very little, not necessarily, the way that the world would count it, but they just don't obey the word as far as what God has commanded them to do. And it's interesting that the difference between those two groups of women is often a mindset, an attitude, an approach that's rooted not in confidence in themselves, but confidence in who God is and what he can do through them. So that's when she's talking about being able to overcome self-doubt, discouragement, and the temptation to quit. That may not necessarily be something that you can muster in and of yourselves. For some of us, we can, but some of us will achieve that by relying on the Lord. And just understand that choosing to do that could really make a difference in a life that has amounted to very much or a life that has amounted to very little. So she says, here are the keys to gaining self-mastery. The first thing that she says that is necessary is an idea of self-worth. Learn to appreciate yourself. If you knew who you are and your inestimable worth in the sight of God, you would expect more of yourself, be more confident, more in control. Develop a good self-image to gain an indestructible feeling of worth. This was something that I feel like I had to learn. And I think that the popular way of going about trying to achieve this is telling people, and specifically women, that they're awesome. But sometimes there aren't things that are awesome about us. Sometimes we really are fraught with just as many flaws and weaknesses as we have strengths. And sometimes even having an even objective view of yourself can leave you feeling a bit less than. What I have learned is I don't know if I asked God or if he just took it upon himself to show me. I don't remember. But I remember the Lord gave me eyes to see me the way that he sees me. He gave me eyes to see me the way that he sees me. I remember there was something going on with me and my husband, and I was upset with him about something. And or was it that? But either, I don't know if it was something I remember what it was. I was asking God, I was remembering sin from the past, and it was making me feel super down and just like I wasn't worthy and all of these negative thoughts. And I said, God, I don't know how to think about this. Like, just teach me how to think about this. I just said that prayer, and then I just went on reading my Bible and, like going through my regular prayers. And at the end of that was I said that prayer, and about 25 minutes later, I was done reading and I had done praying. And then I just kind of sat there quietly, and I just started having all of these thoughts of the things in which my husband has sinned against me or offended me in some way. And I was remembering those things, but I was just overwhelmed with this feeling of, I know that those offenses are there, but I just felt this overwhelming love for him. It wasn't that I forgot. I remembered those offenses, but the love that I felt for him was so overwhelming that it's like I didn't even care. It's like they just weren't even a thought for me. I had the memory of them, but the effect was gone. I loved him deeply. And I said, God, are you teaching me like how to properly love my husband? Like, what's this about? He said, yeah, but you asked me earlier how to think about these previous sins that you've committed and how they're making you feel worthless. What I just showed you about your husband is how I feel about you. I'm aware of all of the sin that you've committed. I know that it's there. And the love that I feel for you is so overwhelming that it covers that. And it made me remember that verse that said, love covers a multitude of sin. he explained to me and showed me and allowed me to feel like the emotional experience of being aware of sin, but just being overwhelmed with a kind of love, such that it's not that sin doesn't matter, but it's been covered. The love covers the sin. And so when she talks about having a sense of self-worth, that is how I got that. By asking the Lord, show me how to think about myself based on the way you see me. And he did. He actually answered that prayer for me. He showed me how he sees me, even in light of my sin, because the work of Jesus Christ, the blood that he shed, covered that sin from me, so much to the point that all that was left, in spite of the sin, all that was left was love, and real love, not like a put on love, a love that you have to like make yourself feel. It was real love. And so I would say, if you're struggling with a feeling of self-worth, ask your God in heaven, who you now have access to because you have placed your faith in Jesus Christ. Ask him to show you how he sees you. And keep asking him until he does. The next step, she said, is through fasting and prayer. This means to abstain from all food and beverage for a period of time. 24-hour fast is long enough if practiced regularly. There are two purposes to a fast: to develop self-mastery and to gain spiritual strength needed to reach the goal. When physical needs of the body are withheld, the spirit is more in tune with God. Accompany the fasting with prayer, asking God for spiritual strength to reach your goal. I have a story for you guys about this. I did mention earlier when she said that part of self-mastery includes being able to subdue your appetite. I grew up in a family where overweight, obesity, and morbid obesity is rampant in my family. And it's so rampant that it kills my family members prematurely. They die unnecessarily and early. And I was raised in an environment where that kind of attitude towards food, really what it was an abuse of food. I was raised in an environment where the abuse of food was normal. I didn't even see it as wrong. So then when I started developing like being hangry or really poor eating habits, filling my body with things that would only make me unhealthy, I just didn't see anything that was wrong with that. And I would even eat when I wasn't hungry. Sometimes I would eat when I was full, just for the purposes of being able to commune with the people around me, because that's how we connected over food, even if there was no need for the food. And I remember one day I was sleeping. It was Thursday. I remember exactly because I actually put it in my calendar. It was a Thursday night. I woke up in the middle of the night. I don't remember what time, but it was something early, like 2 or 3 in the morning. I woke up immediately, and I knew that who it was. I knew I had not just coincidentally woken up. God woke me up, and as clear as day, I heard him say, "Tomorrow you will fast." And that was it. But I also knew the reason that he was telling me to fast is that he had not approved of the way that I had managed myself with food during that day on Thursday. I had like, just for the purposes of being able to like sit down with my family, I was eating food when I wasn't hungry. I was like stuffing my belly, like to the point that I was kind of sick actually. And he woke me up and said, "Tomorrow you will fast." And that, he didn't tell me that I needed to do it every Friday, but I did. I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that was instruction from him. I knew it was him who was waking me up, and I knew why he woke me up. So I was like, I'm not going to disobey. I'm going to do what he said. And so Friday I did a 24-hour fast. It wasn't a full day, so I went from dinner to dinner. Thursday night dinner was the last meal I had, and I didn't eat again until Friday night dinner time at 6 p.m. That period of fasting was so profoundly impactful for me that while he did not tell me to, I have made it my practice every Friday to do a 24-hour fast and devote Friday to prayer and fasting with the Lord. I knew for me that part of the reason that he wanted me to fast is because he was not pleased with the way in which my belly was subduing me, and the way that my appetite was cracking a whip on my back, and I would respond like I was enslaved to my appetite. He was like, no, you belong to me. You don't belong to your belly. And so part of him telling me to fast was to correct that and to put me in the place of control over my belly, and as the book says it, to subdue my appetite and to not be subdued by it. Because I think that God is a jealous God, and he's not going to stand by and allow us to be controlled or ruled over by anyone other than himself, even if the thing that is ruling you is the belly that he gave you. He won't stand for it. And so it is true that fasting and prayer is a way for you to exercise dominion and control over your body. And when you learn how to deny yourself things like food for a time, that kind of dominion over your body will not only translate to you having control over your appetite, it will translate into having self-control in things that are far more impactful, like sexual self-control. That's something that in our generation is really missing. Expressions of sexual immorality and sexual perversion are rampant because we as a culture do not have control over our bodies. Our bodies and their desires control us. Sometimes starting at the big dog, the top dog of like sexual immorality and things like that can be kind of hard. So start smaller. If you learn how to control your belly, you can learn to control the other parts of your body too. But I'm going to keep on moving. We're going to leave that for another day to discuss that. The next thing that she says is necessary for self-mastery is train the will. Another way to gain self-mastery is to train the will. For example, every day, do one or more of the following. Do something unpleasant. Take a cold shower. Exercise. Or eat healthy foods that you don't like. Do something difficult. Do a hard job. Stick to your diet. Or work on a difficult goal. Forgo coffee, candy, or smoking. Demand quotas of yourself. Get up at 4:30. Get a specific job done at a given time, etc. So training the will. This is something that she said, these are just examples, guys. You don't have to do exactly these things. You don't have to take a cold shower. You know what I'm saying? But when she's saying do something unpleasant, that's you training your will. That's another way of you being in the driver's seat and be the one to take control and the reins of your will, as opposed to your flesh, your physical body being in the driver's seat, driving and directing what you will and will not do. This also goes back to the emotions. You have to be the one who sits in control over your emotions. Your emotions cannot control you. How do you achieve that? By training your will. I'm in the habit of getting up at 5 a.m. every morning. I do that even on Saturday and Sunday. It's a routine that I do. Part of it is because I am determined about training my will. Proverbs 31 says that, I don't remember the exact quote, maybe I can put it on the screen. It says something to the effect that the excellent wife rises while it is still yet night. That speaks to her being in the discipline of getting up early, rising early, so early in fact that it's still dark. At 5 a.m. where I live, it's still dark outside. And so I have obeyed the Bible and put that practice in place, and it has been extremely rewarding for me. Do something unpleasant. Something that's unpleasant for me that I do, she says exercise, eat healthy foods. I generally can do those things with relative ease, but something that I don't like doing is the way that I go about managing my weight, for instance, is I have a range of weights. These are not the exact numbers, but just for the purpose of demonstrating the point, let's say the range that I allow myself to be in is in between 120 and 130 pounds. As long as I'm somewhere in that range, I don't worry too much about my diet and all that stuff. But as soon as I reach 130 pounds, I know it's time for me to get on a diet and level set back to the middle. I lose 5 pounds as soon as I get to 130 pounds. Something that I hate doing is calorie counting. I hate doing it. But I understand that exercise of self-discipline ultimately goes to building the character trait of training the will, making my body obey me, being the one to spearhead my life as opposed to my whims and my desires and my feelings being the one to drive my life. When I tell myself, okay, I'm at 130 pounds, time to level set back down to the middle, I don't like doing that process, but I make myself do it anyway, because I know that every time I'm doing it, every time I sit down and track out my calories, I am exercising, training my will. She says that you should do something difficult, do a hard job, stick to your diet, work on a difficult goal, etc. This necessity for being able to train your will is like an entire necessity for being a good wife, mother, and homemaker. You will not be able to run your household in any semblance of order and structure if you are not within yourself able to train your will. The level of discipline that's expressed in your house. I don't mean like disciplining your children, but I'm saying the level of order, structure, and discipline as reflected in your house is the same level of order, structure, and discipline that you are experiencing within. So if your house is in disarray, it's likely because you on the inside are in disarray, which should be an indication I need to put in practice methods to get myself in a position where I can train my will, where my will obeys me. I'm obeying something, but I'm not the one in control. It's so necessary for homemaking. It's so necessary. We as the wife and the mother are the heartbeat of the home. We set the tempo. We set the atmosphere. If the home is in disarray, that's on us. And so all of these things, while they actually apply to the Christian walk in general, they even down on a practical level will impact what kind of homemaking experience you will have, and therefore what kind of experience your family will have in the home that you create. The last thing she says about this notion of self-mastery, the Bible would call it self-control, that's necessary in her mind to get self-mastery rooted and firmly rooted in your personality and your identity, is to be determined. She says, in addition to the suggestions given, you need determination. Keep your goal in mind and be determined to stick to it. Don't let others sidetrack you, discourage you, or waste your time. Be determined to do whatever is necessary, no matter how difficult, and to do it when it needs doing. You will reach your goals and gain self-mastery in the process. This is something that comes into play when you see that you're constantly behind laundry that never ends. The dishes are always overpiling. Meals are always kind of half done, or you're not getting to them at all. This is a lack of determination. You haven't yet really determined within yourself that these are the things that need to get done, and I am going to see to it that it gets done. Prior to being a homemaker, I did work in corporate America, and one of the jobs that I had was a project manager for a design team, and it was my job to keep the rest of the design team on track. I tracked all of the tasks. I tracked where we were on the task, how long it was going to take to be completed. I would have to give updates to like executive teams on where the project was, how long it was going to take. And something that I realized, in the same way that I had to be extremely regimented about what I not necessarily expected from my team members, but that everything was going to be tracked, everything was going to be measured, everything that needed to be accomplished was indeed going to be accomplished. That is the attitude that I have towards homemaking. That's what she's talking about when she says determination. You have to actually set out and say, these are the things that need to get done, and I'm going to see to them getting done. I know on my channel I talk mostly about like notions of homemaking, but on a practical level, when we moved into our new home, I literally took inventory of our entire house and said, okay, this house, we're first-time home buyers, so this house, unlike the last house we were renting, is full of tile. So now I need to, on my list of things, I have to sweep and mop the tile probably at least every other week, but maybe once a week. I noticed that we have these shutters on the inside of the house, these wooden shutters. Those are going to have to be dusted. So I wrote down dust shutters. We have a lot of carpet, vacuuming the carpet. Dishes, that's going to have to be done daily. Dinner prep, that's going to have to be done daily. And I went through the whole house and I came up with a long list of everything that needed to be done. And I literally sat down in my Google Calendar and scheduled out which things I was going to do each day. So when I wake up in the morning, I have a master schedule of what homemaking, house chores need to be done, homeschooling activities that need to be done with my child that's still home with me, meal prepping stuff that needs to be done. I have a list that's in my phone, and I check it off as I go. And so in the same way that I would sit there as a project manager and be like, Kurt, where are you on this project? John, where are you on this project? Kate, how are we looking on this? I do that. I project manage myself. I have a task list that's already I sat down and I put it out for, I planned out for it's like a 3-month thing. So even things that get done every 3 months, that's on my calendar. I know exactly what I'm doing and I get my tasks done. There is a practical side of having determination, but before you even get to the calendar planning, before you even get to having a recurring list of tasks that you do, you have to determine in yourself, these are the things that need to get done, and I am going to see to them getting done. This is a character trait that can be applied to homemaking, but it is necessary for being a successful woman of God. You must be someone who has self-mastery and determination as a subset of that self-mastery. Anyway, this is a quick video for today. There's so much more on her list of qualities that make a godly wife and mother. This is kind of an idea of biblical femininity. I'm super excited to discuss the rest of things, but let me know what your thoughts have been on this notion of self-mastery, or as the Bible would call it, self-control. Write in the comment section, do you feel like you have a good grip on this, or is this something that you're still working on? In what areas do you feel like you need yet more help in developing self-mastery? Put those in the comment section below. And others, if you see that someone is struggling with something that you have yourself already overcome, reply to their comment and give them practical advice on how you went about overcoming that so as to walk in self-mastery on that particular thing. But as always, thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next time.